ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start the event. Dear guests, welcome to the House of Switzerland here at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Thank you for joining this event, Snack the System, Building a New Society Through the Lens of Food. My name is Rael, and I'm working at the Swiss mission in Rome for the project called Bites of Transfoodmation. The project was launched 2 years ago with the support of the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. In the context of the Food Systems Summit last year, a group of young, diverse individuals was given the space and the trust to work together on a unifying vision on the future of food systems. In virtual conversation, the group debated and focused on what unites them. And what was the result? A political intention in the form of the Bites of Transfoodmation manifesto. Those virtual meetings were recognized by the UN Food Systems Summit as independent dialogues. In the last months, the group had the opportunity to present and debate this common vision in various events, ranging from a G20 side event to COP26, Expo Dubai, or most recently in the House of Switzerland in Milan. In a series of Snack the System events, we aim to show that this vision is not only theory, but that changing food systems is possible and it's already happening. Today, we would like to provide concrete examples and different perspectives on how this transformation towards more sustainability is possible. In 2 panel segments, we will explore entry points of the manifesto and touch upon renewed traditions, urbanized agriculture, personalized nutrition, youth involvement, and diversity in food systems. After each panel, you will have the opportunity to interact with the speakers. And towards the end, you can look forward to a delicious aperitif. But before we dive into this Transfoodmation conversation, I would like to welcome Dr. Agnes Calibata, who is the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. Dr. Calibata also served as the special envoy of the United Nations Secretary General for last year's Food Systems Summit. Dr. Calibata, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here this time around. You know, since we started talking food systems, every time someone introduces me and says Green Revolution, I ask, then where is the food system and how does it fit in? So we are working on it. We definitely, from an African perspective, we had a huge aspiration to be like everyone else, achieve a green revolution, but now we need to achieve a food system revolution. And it all started here, right, in a way. In a sense that 2 years ago, just before COVID-19, we met in this room to follow up on what the Secretary General had asked us to do. We wanted views from you all. We wanted views from private sector. So really my first mission after being appointed was to go around seeking views. And this seemed like a beautiful location and a good place to come and get that conversation started and ensure that what the private sector is thinking, what different people that come here are thinking, what the public sector that comes here is thinking, is really part of how we shape the summit and the summit conversations. And that, as you saw, we really ensured that the views that we got from here, the ability to engage youth, ensuring that youth were in nearly every part of the conversation, vice chairs of action tracks, formed their own coalition, you know, really came up as a big coalition later, a group of youth that actually came to COP26 with their own, in their own right, having mobilized from a food system perspective. We did get the private sector to really also come together in a good way, which carried through and was, today actually you see a lot of energy and momentum that comes from that conversation. And of course we did engage the public and everybody else and civil society. Thousands after thousands of dialogues, after 2 years of meetings, we had the Food Systems Summit as the summit that I personally believe, and I'm sure you all do, that touched so many people, that catalyzed so much engagement, and left us all asking ourselves, so what's going to be my place in the food system? What's going to be my role in the food system? And how do we change our food system for the better? Because it has huge opportunities. It feeds us for starters. It ensures that we have functional economies for starters. But it also is adding certain things to our environment that we don't like. The 30% contribution to emissions, the 8% that comes from food loss and waste. That's just so huge. 8% contribution to emissions comes from food loss and waste. Can we afford that? We can definitely start doing away with that. So many things came up, but here the opportunity is, we all agreed that we need to be transforming our food system. So now as we speak, we are sitting in a crisis after crisis after crisis, the most recent crisis being the Ukraine crisis, and we can't just have a conversation like these things are not happening. So for me, the question becomes, what are the things we need to be doing? When we came into the food system, we were worried about 2030 and the fact that we need to come through on 2030 agenda. But we also need to come through on feeding people right now that are suffering because of all the things that are happening around us, especially Ukraine, Russia. We need to, that's my time up? No, thank you. We need to recognize that a lot of people are living through unbelievable climate change, and it's getting worse. You did see the most recent IPCC report. We can't see that and still live like nothing has happened. And we need to recognize the amount of inequity that is just building to the system because of all these challenges. So really, if there's a society that is being challenged, there's no society in our lifetime that's been bombarded with challenges like ours has been, all the way from climate change since 2014, to COVID-19, to these prices we are seeing that are making it difficult for families to feed themselves, and of course to this crisis in Ukraine that is making it impossible for us to think about where we are going. But listen, we are also a population that has the ability to deal with this. We have all the technologies we need at our hands. We saw through the Food Systems Summit that we have so many solutions that are sitting in different places, and we need to harness this energy. We have so much resources among us, ourselves, our brains, our capability, our resources. So we need to harness them and make sure that we are really taking decisive action. We have 8 harvests to 2030. Are those 8 harvests going to be about strengthening resilience of systems and farming systems so that we don't get into a spiral of hunger? Right now we have millions of people that have been the highest since our world was created of hunger. How do we break that spiral? For me, it's really about investing in food systems, investing in the future of people. Of course, we need to deal with the humanitarian crisis. Of course, we have to address those challenges. We have to support people where they need us, but we also need to strengthen the system to be resilient enough to continue providing the services we need from it. So thank you so much. Thank you to the Swiss government for supporting us and getting us off the ground. When we had this conversation here, I was seated right here, giving us that support, giving us that platform to be able to reach a community like we did. Thank you for providing the support, Christian, the support we needed to get off the ground. You provide the first few dollars when everybody was still thinking, food system, what does that mean? You all stepped forward and made sure that we had the support we needed to be able to reach to other countries and say, Switzerland is leading, where are you? People are doing something. We are going to move forward and transform food systems without you. And everybody else came on board. So really thank you for showing that leadership and providing that leadership. So let's go forward. Let's lead with food systems, because I don't know how many choices, how many options we have. We need to lead with sustainability. We need to lead with food systems. We need to give to our world so that it can give back to us, so that it doesn't reject us. Our world doesn't need us. We need it. Our planet doesn't need us. We need it. So we need to start doing the right thing. So thank you all. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of the engagement around food systems. And thank you for what you're doing. The food system was about bringing the conversation to each of you individually, so that every time you look at that plate, you know that the decisions that are being made in the world on food systems, you actually have an influence in that. You actually can do something. Just like when you wake up, you actually switch off that light when you're leaving the house. Same thing, that food is your way of talking to the world around how we can influence our food system. So we have so much power. In addition to everything else we are doing, we as consumers have so much power. We as producers have so much power. And I leave it up to you to work with all of us to transform this food system. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Agnes Calibata, for those inspiring words. We would like to jump into the first conversation now, and I would like to welcome Madeleine to the stage. Madeleine is working as a policy advisor for the Swiss Federal Office for Agriculture, and we would look forward to an engaging conversation together with Christian, Christina, Sasha, and Himanshu.
So Rahel, thank you for the floor and thank you for the invitation to moderate this first panel. Ladies and gentlemen, the time is ready to build a new society through the perspective of food. So this first sentence of the Bites of Transfoodmation manifesto will lead us through this panel discussion. And I'm very happy to welcome 4 inspiring people on that first panel today. That are working towards the realization of the unifying vision of a future society through the lens of food. So welcome to Christina Sen-Jacobsen, to Himanshu Agarwal, to Christian Bertsch and Sasha Lauterborn. Thank you for being with us today. So we have about 20 minutes for the panel. We will, of course, also have time for your questions before we will hand over to the second panel. So, and without further ado, I would suggest that we dive immediately into this discussion and hear from you actually what you think is needed to make this transformation of food systems happen. Dr. Agnes Calibata just said it, we need people like you. There need to be a sense of action. So Christian Bertsch, I would like to start with you. You are the CEO of Incento Insect Food, the European pioneer of insect food, and also a Bites of Transfoodmation member. What do you think are, let's say, the main ingredients to make this transformation of food system happen, and how is your enterprise contributing to that? Please, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, these are really, really key elements that are needed to be able to do this transformation. So on the one hand side, I think it's really key that we have a legal framework that does allow for the transformation, that gives space, that allows for those changes to happen. And then secondly, we need inspired people. We need to have role models. We need to have people that we see that it's actually possible. And I think this is really a key, and this is also something that we are doing at Incento, being an agri-tech, food tech startup, bringing through insects upcycling side streams of our food production and bringing that back to our food chain. And by doing that, we are convinced that we can bring quite a crucial piece to the puzzle to make our food system more sustainable and more resilient as well.
Thank you very much for this answer. So you touched up on 2 very important points, role models and also the legislative change. I think we will have time in a minute to a bit deeper in that. Sasha Lauterborn, you are working for Green Up. I've learned that it's a Swiss-wide non-profit association operating in 8 cities. And at the same time, you told me that you're also interested to start maybe your own farm. So I would like to ask you the same questions. What is for you really the key issues to shape a sustainable society, and how is Green Up, if you could elaborate a bit on it, contributing to that?
So we at Green Up, we believe in less is more. So less is more in the context of sustainable farming means less use of heavy machinery like tractors and more use of hand tools leads to more uncompacted loose soil, less use of artificial fertilizer, and more use of organic materials leads to more sequestration of carbon, more microorganisms, more active soil life, less use of large farms, and more use of small farms nearby city means more proximity to customers, and less use of retailers, and more farmer-customer relationship means more trust and more income for the farmer. So indeed, I think in farming as well is less more, and that's why I want to start my own farm based on these principles.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It's very inspiring personally for me also, because I'm thinking in the same direction to start my own farm. So it's also good to hear that there are other people joining. And you mentioned, I think, also a very important point, this important role that also the cities in the transformation of the food systems have to play. Thank you very much for that. I would like to turn to Christina Sen-Jacobsen. You are the Managing Director of the Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley, a national-wide initiative to develop and strengthen food innovation in Switzerland. We have heard it quite a couple of times, so the word unifying appears several times in the Bites of Transfoodmation manifesto. So we need unifying factors of future food systems. We need a unifying vision. Your organization, if I understood correctly, is uniting the Swiss food ecosystem. So why do you think is this unifying vision so important?
I think it's a learning we all have by now that the problem will not be solved by one actor. It is something where we need to go across the system and we need to live together. And it's not just for making sustainable food system. We know, and science know, that if you unite, you live stronger, the likelihood of success is better, you can move faster, you will not solve one issue and spill another 3 problems behind you as you go forward. So that's why. And it's a lot more fun doing this with people who think differently, who challenge you differently, and towards the solution. So that's why.
Thank you very much. I think it's very, very insightful also your thoughts, and you have a lot of experience also in that. So we will hear a bit more in a minute also what you could recommend to the young people, how they can be unified. Himanshu, I'd also like to give you the floor. You are the founder at 9 Growers that has set up a commercial vertical farm in South Delhi. So as we all know, food is still mainly produced in rural areas, while at the same time more and more people are living in the urban areas. You say, Himanshu, that your business is contributing to bridging the ever-widening gap between the demand and the supply of fresh food. So do you see this actually as a precondition when we want to transform our food systems in a world who's getting more and more urbanized? So produce more in urban areas?
Yes, exactly, like absolutely. The recent example of COVID-19, the pandemic has taught us, like in the US, like shelves were running out of tissue papers, but in India, shelves were running out of food, especially in like metro cities like New Delhi, which is like capital of India. So the real triggering point was like how much are urban cities dependent on rural cities for food, and the answer was a lot. Like we are heavily dependent on farmers in the rural areas. So what our initiative is like, how can we do farming in urban cities, but then the real challenge is about the real estate cost, which makes it a joke to do farming in New Delhi, or like any metro city for that matter. So like we have built like high-tech urban farms that use 95% less water, 99% less land, and absolutely 0 pesticides. So it's really important, coming back to your question, that we need more strong food supply systems within the urban cities. And that, for that, I mean like farms, like growing, not just distribution centers, like production centers.
Thank you very much. So I think urban areas are one piece of the solution. Now, Sasha, you are planning to build up also kind of something maybe between urban and rural, I would say. You will explain us. But we have this problem that farmers around the world are getting older. Average age of farmers all over the world is 60 years old. In Switzerland, they are above 50 even. So it seems that few young people see a future in agriculture. Is this true? This generation gap that we have actually in the agriculture and food system, I would say it's a ticking time bomb for our future food security. You proved the opposite with your plan to start farming. So from your experience, what is actually needed that we have more young people in that sector to produce our food worldwide?
Well, first of all, I think there need to be more positive examples. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, to be honest. And I saw a lot of positive examples all over the world. And that was inspiring me, that I can see there are people, they like farming, they have fun in farming, they choose to farm because they want to, not because they were born into a farmer's family, but they want to. And they say, everybody says the same, yeah. We really like it, it's hard work. It's not, you don't get rich, but we like it so much we want to do it. So I think that's the point, yeah, that's inspiring. That's inspiring me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you're taking up on a point that Christian just mentioned, the role model, actually, they are very important. So sometimes I also feel that we need to offer young people also more innovative ways of doing it differently. Sometimes maybe in farming, especially in Switzerland, I'm also from a farming family. Sometimes I have the feeling I always need to do it in the same way. And I think the role models also need to show that there are different ways. But of course, for these innovative ways, we also need maybe a new regulatory framework. We need maybe a change in the legislative way. So I've read that Essento Food actually was the driving force in Switzerland to initiate the legislative change that has led to the approval of edible insects as food. So you have a lot of experience in that. So from your point of view, what legislative change or regulatory framework is needed or need to be changed in Switzerland that we have more young women and men in this agriculture and food sector?
Yeah, that was actually quite an interesting journey also, being not from the food area, not being from the legal area, and still going through that whole process. But our experience was really that the officials were quite open to take the discussion up. But something that is quite tricky is the legal barrier does actually, I mean, I had those discussions where people were saying, no, you need to change the legal framework, don't do it. That's not an entrepreneurial thing. And I mean, all farmers are entrepreneurs, and we as insect farmers are farmers as well, just of a kind of a new type of species. But it's really this combination of having the officials, having the state supporting these initiatives, having open windows, having opportunities where we can reach out and where we can discuss. And we are super grateful that the state was open and we had those valuable discussions. And I think only through that and through collaboration, kind of linking back to that, it's not only in the sector, but it's also between the state and the private sector to make those things happen. So I'm actually representing a positive example that we were able to go through because officials were open to discuss about it. And I think this is really a key element that maybe could also be an example how it can be done. And the key element is really not to be afraid of those processes, because this is what entrepreneurs and farmers might be, that, oh, we need to go, in the Swiss case, to Bern, we need to go through this legislative process. But my experience is be open, go out there and talk to them. And this actually helps and also enables new kinds of business models, new ways of production to enter the space. But yeah, I mean, there is still some work to be done to ease the transformation also from the legal framework perspective also in Switzerland.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned a very important point. So not only that the different stakeholders along the chain are connected, but also this discussion with the policy makers is very important. And actually, we have presented the Parliament with the future agriculture policy to this new way of production, like insects, for instance. So we hope that they will do the right thing, actually. So Christina, I want to follow up on what we have touched up on various times now. So this bringing together the different stakeholders, this unifying factor. I think especially for young people, sometimes especially for policymakers, it's sometimes maybe a bit tricky because they don't know where to address which how they are organized. They need to be organized also that you can get a representative way of what they want. So what, from your perspective, your own experience, how can these young people get organized, that they can be heard? What is your suggestion, and what are maybe the tricky issues also to be considered?
Yeah, so in the Swiss Food and Nutrition, well, we're about 100 members, and that is from the largest food company in the world to possibly the smallest startup company in the world, the universities, the investors, the accelerators. It's a very, very diverse member troop, and everybody's signing up to one higher purpose of unleashing the Swiss food innovation forces for better planetary and human health. So that is where we again get united. And then I meet a lot of young people from all these different, one is more academia, the other is the entrepreneurial spirit, and they come and say, where do I start? So the first thing is probably, don't wait for the perfect place. I mean, I love what Dr. Calibata said before, and when she talked about where's my space in all this. We're now at a knowledge point where we all agree we have a challenge. We, the food system, are the problem, but we're also the solution. So this space is not a space, it's a journey for the young people. So my advice number one is just do something. I mean, for the young people here, you are already because you're here. But for your friends or those back home, jump into a meetup with Food Hack, they're all over the world. Attend a conference with very smart politicians. Whatever you do, hang up a note at your university saying, hey, coffee talk about this and that. Just do something. The second thing is, what I like to suggest for anybody looking for a change or do something, the 50 cups of coffee. Start with 3. I mean, ask somebody here, can we have a networking coffee? This is my challenge. I want to contribute. I want to be a part of a bigger purpose. I want to do whatever I can do. And ask that person at the end of the coffee, you take something from everybody you talk to suggest another 2 people for you. 50 cups of coffee. Log them, track them. What did you get out? Because you will find your true space. And yeah, I guess there's always 3 bullet points to advice. The third one, yeah, I mean, be fearless. Well, there's something big at stake here. We are potentially, or we will all die, that we know. So don't hold yourself back. Aim big, go strong. Don't be the limit to your own potential on how you can change the food system. I think Mahatma Gandhi said, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try and spend the night in a room with a mosquito. Yeah. So be a mosquito and make somebody scratch behind their ear for change.
Thank you very much for this inspiring words. So the 3 bullet points: do something, the personal challenge, and don't hold yourself, dream big. I think that's very inspiring. Thank you so much. Himanshu, I have one question to you also on this bringing together, working together, have a common vision that is needed for this transformation of food systems. I have a question to you on the intergenerational exchange also, because this generation gap sometimes is challenging because we have the older farmers and the very young ones and in between no one, and we lose all this knowledge that we have gathered over the years. So I think this intergenerational exchange is very important. You told me that you started your business with your mom, what I found is very inspiring. So how important was this intergenerational exchange of knowledge when starting your business? And would you even say it was one of the key success factors?
First of all, like, thank you for bringing the Indian vibe in the room. So, interestingly, like, how Nine Grower started is like my mom was doing was trying out hydroponics for her kitchen garden, and I was like, would you like to start a business? And she was like, dude, find somebody of your age to do work with you. Like, why do you? She has been a homemaker for 47 years of her life. And she was like, I don't know anything about business, but I said that you know everything about managing stuff. And I believe that our generation is like I can say for me, like we are like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do everything together. And that's the reason like I have seen a lot of businesses collapse. So I was like, my mother was the right fit, of course. And on a lighter side, the equity stays in home.
Okay. That was okay. Well explained. Thank you so much. But I think you saw it you showed it very nicely. I mean, the different generations, as of course also all the different people have different strengths, and I mean it's all about bringing it together to grow together. Thank you very much for this inspiring statement as well. I would like to touch upon one issue that also for me seems very important, and it's education. We have talked about it, Christian Bertsch, lately in the preparation of this panel, and you are doing actually an important educational work also among the population to draw the attention to the topic of eating insects. What I experience also lately with the voting on agricultural issues in Switzerland is that we have a strong Stadt-Land-Graben, so that people in the cities are voting quite differently than people on the countryside. So different ideas also how to reach and how to aim for this transformation of food systems. So what would you say from your experience? What role is playing education, and how can we maybe also close this Stadt-Land-Graben a bit?
Yeah, I think this is also one of the key issues. If we want to successfully transform our food system, everybody needs to be educated. And what I do experience in my daily life is also that a lot of people do not know what's behind the food. So they go to a supermarket, they get a product, but that's not the end. I mean, there are a lot of people involved in the production of that. And I think this is really a key element that we get that out. And what we're doing with Swiss Insects in Switzerland and with Speiseinsekten in Germany, actually go to schools. We go to schools and we explain what's behind. Where is our food coming from? What does it mean? Who is involved? And actually, it might seem that a food product is a simple process, but still a lot of people are involved in the production of it. And I think this is really key, that the consumer society is educated on how food is produced and what all goes into it. From the farmer, through some transformation, through logistics, it has a high value, and something that I experienced as well. The more people know about it, the higher they value it, and we actually start to realize now, taking the Swiss context, food is actually cheap for what it actually is and for how many people are involved in the production of it.
Yeah. No, you mentioned an important point. I would ask you, Sasha, would you like to add on that? So, I mean, when starting now your farm, maybe here around Davos, I'm thinking you will also need to see what customer do I have? What price is he ready to pay? What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I have to totally agree. Yeah, the customers have to see it. Yeah. So if you start a farm right here at Davos, nearby, there's the proximity, and they say how it grows. Yeah. So they will value the food more. And I started a small urban gardening project in Germany, and there were a lot of people. They told me, "Oh, that's how broccoli looks like." So I really think that is important, so that the people that there is really a direct relationship between the farmer and the customer, for restoring trust and for the customer to value more the production of food. So they can see, okay, the broccoli was planted yesterday, and now it will take 3 months until I can harvest it. These are the points. Yeah. I didn't even know that before I started gardening. So I think this is important. Yeah.
Yeah, so restoring trust and also to show people what is behind to produce food. Thank you very much. I would like to open the floor also to give you a chance. I would have much more questions, but I would also like to invite you. I have help from Rahel and Rahel, who will bring you the mic if you would like to ask a question. Please present yourself quickly when you ask a question, and maybe you want to address it directly to one of the panelists. Please.
Yeah, so thank you very much. It was very interesting to listen to all of your opinions. Thank you also, Christina. So I see a big issue basically with the education and communication towards the broad public when it comes to food. And what if we start talking and thinking about food as medicine, right? Everybody of us is easily paying a lot of money for drugs in the drugstores. But actually, food is medicine, yeah? So first of all, that one. And the second one, what if we start talking and thinking about food as energy, like energy infrastructure for future smart cities? And this is how we should frame the discussion about food in the future, I guess. So perhaps, Christina, what are your thoughts about that?
To the first one about let food be thy medicine. We know that 95 or in some countries even 98% of the cost is for curing the diseases, and only actually when it comes to medicine and preventive health, it's minimal. And there are beliefs that if you would eat right and know your microbiome and DNA and into precision nutrition, food or illness would be a matter of choice and not unfortunate. So there's a huge potential here. And I have a sense that even the pharma industry is now increasingly open up for that. So yes, let's talk about that. Now, when it comes to the energy agenda, I will pass it on to my friend to answer.
Yes, and just to add to it, so like in our farm, we cater to a lot of cancer patients because there are plenty of studies like the benefits of microgreens and herbs and medicinal herbs and how they can help you to recoup from the disease and recover. And so right now we got to learn from the patients itself. Like we did not do any studies, and we saw them importing wheat grass like it grows in 5 days. They were like importing from outside New Delhi, and I was like, you don't have to. Like now we can grow anything and everything for them, and they can have fresh juices, fresh smoothies, or even microgreen. And a lot of cancer patients just chew them after their lunch, and it has really helped them because we have been doing this since last 3 years. And there are a lot of greens also that helps you with diabetes, thyroids, and all. So food is really the medicine, and it's better if you take it before catching a disease.
Yeah, thank you very much. An interesting thought. So to change the value of food and to value it more and to see it as medicine. Other questions there in the middle, please.
Yes, thank you for such an interesting discussion. I'm Francis. I'm a student at the University of Basel, and I'm also part of a young group trying to influence the food system. So my question would be to Christian. You mentioned that you have been engaging school children to try to impart this kind of new thinking into them. So I would like to know what are some of the entry points that you observed are very useful, and also what are some of the challenges in your experience about introducing practical application of some of these conversations into school children? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Well, indeed, for us as the sector organization Swiss Insects, one of the tricky parts is the financing of the interventions. But what we do see is teachers, I'm talking here of the Swiss context, are super open for discussions. I mean, food is just amazing because you cannot only talk about it, but you can taste it, you can smell it. There is no other subject as powerful as that. And so what we experience is really the openness from the teachers, but also the openness from the students. And what we get out of it is we get like those handwritten letters after our inventions of students and teachers bundling those, sending them to them and thanking for this interesting intervention. So I think there is nothing as powerful at school than food, and to talk about it, to really give different perspectives. And something that I have found out also going into schools and teaching is do not underestimate our young kids. They know more, they ask a lot of questions, but they also do the connections. And I mean, those are our customers. They are helping us to do this transformation, and they're actually on this challenge with us. They're supporting us. So I think there are a lot of open opportunities, but there is definitely more potential that we can take.
Thank you very much. I see Christina would like to add on this.
Yeah, I think children, fascinating thing. I sometimes hear, hey, Christina, drop our generation, drop our politicians. They don't hear, they don't see, start with the next generation. But here's my secret. Who runs the household? It's not mom, it's not dad, it's the kids. I mean, in my house, who put the foot down and say, I want oat milk? It was my, that time, 7-year-old daughter and her friends. 2 vegan, 2 vegetarian, and the rest self-declared flexitarian. When I was a child, I didn't know what a vegetarian was until I was maybe 15. And that was a crazy person, by the way. So we've come a long way, and I think the children have a lot of hope in them. Food waste, letting them play food detectives and bring home their knowledge to the household. I still have hope for our generation. I mean, come on. But a great work you're doing, Christian, and anybody else supporting our kids to know and understand and see it.
Thank you. So to see how important the young, even the young, I mean, not even, I still think I'm a bit young, but they maybe
didn't mean to insult anybody.
A lost generation, exactly. I have another question there and then here. Thank you.
So thank you for the nice panel discussion. My question is for Himanshu, because I'm from the Philippines and I've been advocating vertical farming in urban areas in the Philippines. And I've contacted some of my collaborators there, but the main argument that they always pose towards me against vertical farming is that it's not organic agriculture, and they want to market this produce as organic produce. So faced with this kind of argument, I don't know how to deal or how to promote vertical farming to, yeah.
I get what you're saying. So I've had that question a lot, and I'm like, if you don't want to buy, don't buy. Like, we have 1.5 billion people in India, and not everybody is like going after the marketing gimmick. And of course, organic for them means like this is residue-free, pesticides-free. So we have to take an extra step to educate them and to inform them. Like, this is even better than organic or as good as organic, or like this is a different class apart, like this is hydroponics. Like, so you don't have to like deal with those sort of questions. Just focus on your product and just focus on the right customer who really values that product, and just don't enter into the debates and discussion. Like, save your energy and time. I would say that.
Clear. But do you also invite people to your vertical farm
Yeah.
so that they can see how it is produced?
My customers are more than welcome to visit our farm, plug their own greens and go. But just follow the hygiene protocols, that's it. Because we don't want pests to come along.
Thank you.
Is it possible, is it possible, Himanshu, is it possible that you actually find ways of talking about the value of your products? I mean, rather than leave it to the customer. I mean, what is the superiority of your product versus organic? What is the superiority? What's the contribution to the environment? What is the contribution to health? What's the contribution to people? What are you saving and what are you being careful about? And I think there's real value in packaging your own brand and making sure that people understand that you have, like he's saying, let's cut the distance to the farm, to the consumer. That's his focus, Christian. No, Sashi, I think you're trying to cut the distance to the farmer, to the consumer. You're trying to focus on town-based growing. But the things we are concerned about, people want to know if these things are addressed. Nutrition, environmental issues, and all the other things. So how do you address those?
Okay. So first of all, I will start with the value, like how, is it better or is it not better? I personally have had a leaf that was harvested 35 days back, and it was fresh in the refrigerator. We don't wash, we don't rinse anything, and like you taste it and then you know it. And we have a really high customer retention ratio that speaks for itself. Second, like how are we sustainable? And like I know we consume a lot of energy, but that's like we don't even consume even 10% of the energy that a supermarket consumes, and we are producing food. And I'm here to meet a lot of people who can help us with energy solutions. I'm also meeting a scientist who has developed a technology to generate water out of thin air, so that we can also set up farms in Africa, for that matter. And we don't waste anything. Like once you order, then we harvest. We don't have a cold storage in our farm. So like it's like purely sustainable, and there is like zero wastage. On the contrary, in India, as per our studies, from farm to stores, almost 20% food gets spoiled, and when a customer buys it, almost 50% of it is spoiled again. So on an average, we're looking at 35 to 40% food wastage for perishable goods, and ours is like less than 2%.
Thank you. So I would like to take one last question here in the front. Rahel, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Joel, and this question is for Christina. Thank you so much. I was looking, in the last 70 years, technology helped a lot increase the yield of farming and food production, and it helped the population globally, right? And I reckon, that's my perception, that the work you're doing is bringing that new type of technology, startups, come to the market, but also connect with the big corporations, right? How is that working? And do big corporations actually embrace these new technologies and startups, and they do adopt? I would like to understand more the adoption with regards to the life cycle of food systems. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. I mean, the advancement in farming is just amazing. I think it's fair to tag it the biggest advancement for humans in terms of living an affluent life and start trading and whatever not. Farming is the key to feeding the population. I mean, I dread what we stand on the threshold of now of food scarcity, and we haven't addressed it today. Now I'm getting the goosebump moment, but it's there, and we need to move on that really fast. So your question was about how is it embraced and how do we get it out there? I personally believe today we have all the technologies we need to build sustainable food systems. It's there. So who and what is holding it back? And this is not supposed to be a finger-pointing exercise, but it's getting back to uniting, working collaboratively, systemic. Policies are being blamed of being slow in changing, moving forward. Universities are being blamed of not knowing how to get technologies out of the lab. Big industries are being blamed for not wanting to change and adopt. But as I said, it's not a blaming game. What I've observed working with open innovation for 20 years plus is that we have a great momentum now. Open innovation used to be Fort Knox. Go and buy. I worked for a big national corporate myself. Go and buy, don't tell anybody your secrets, and get the rights, exclusive right, everything, everywhere, and so on. Today, we have eye level between the big ones who have the footprint and who we need, and the little ones who indeed bring out new technologies, new patterns, new solutions, dare do what everybody says cannot be done. So we're in a good place with this eye level. And people want to collaborate. They no longer, and Nestle is no longer asking, give us exclusivity rights for all our categories, all our countries and everything. They say, can we apply your technology here to our Green Gourmet Garden brands dumplings and do a partnership? So, and we're getting all the success stories now, so more will follow. We're moving from the ecosystem to the ecosystems in action. The thing is, we need to move really fast, yeah? And hence, everybody needs to up their game. Everybody needs to be courageous. No, we don't want to put consumers at risk by approving novel food premature. But for Switzerland, we have a huge opportunity to be a playground for these novel food technologies. For any company in the world, we have the most innovation-curious, happy to pay more consumers, or we don't say consumers anymore, we say citizens, because they are not consuming, they're choosing. We have everything we need. So let's go there, and that is where I hope to meet some Swiss politicians here who will engage with me on that discussion. Does that answer your question? So hope, the color of green, hope, yeah?
Thank you very much. A very powerful statement at the end. I think I would leave it there. You will have the chance to dive into the discussion with these panelists in a minute during the apéro. We have touched up into very important issues like the legislative change that needs to change, proximity between production and consumption, the power of unite people, the intergenerational knowledge exchange. I would like to close with a quote of the UN Secretary General Guterres during the last International Youth Day, 2021. He said, "I urge everyone to guarantee young people a seat at the table as we build our future world." And I'm very happy for this opportunity to have been able to showcase with this panel how young people use their seat at the table with a lot of energy, commitment, and persistence. Thank you very much to Christina, Himanshu, Christian, and Sasha. Please give them a big applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this refreshing and inspiring discussion. We will now move on to the second panel, where we shift our focus more towards the consumption side and the topic of true cost and true value of food. Welcome to our moderator, Christian Frutiger, who is Assistant Director General and Head of the Global Cooperation at SEC. For this conversation, please join us on stage, Sean, Alessa, Eugenia, and Suzanne.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Rahel. Hello, everybody. So while the panel gets installed, warm welcome to this conversation. Yes, one of the fundamental objectives of Bites of Transfoodmation is, as we have heard, to give young people a voice in the food systems dialogue and in the international debate on food systems. I have to say, I'm very happy. This is one of the youngest audiences I have seen at the WEF since Sunday, and I think we need much more of it. So I have a great panel here with young people and still young people to now look a bit at the consumer side. In the first panel, we looked at the production side. Now we want to shift a little bit toward the consumption side. And there's been talk about the cost, the value of food. There has been talk about price. And Sean, you are with the World Economic Forum, heading the Food Systems Initiative. You're also a member of the executive board of the WEF. And you have had quite some debates, right, on value, cost of food. And it would be great to sort of hear your introductory thoughts on this.
Thank you. Actually, I was at a dinner last night where it was on the true value of food, and it was someone was using, the moderator of the table was using true cost, true value, and there was a huge debate that these are actually quite different. And so can we sort of see that where actually the cost is an accounting measure where you're actually starting to cost in some of those real costs, the costs of the cost of greenhouse gas emissions that your food is having, whether that be through transport or that sort of thing. But the value, the true value, is actually something much more powerful in a way. If you take what that, you can't put a cost on local community cohesion, on intergenerational, handing over of values around food and all of that sort of thing. And so that broader value of how we actually think about food, not as just a consumable, as something we eat, but basically as something that can enable the whole reframing of the way we think about our society at the moment. The value it has in terms of health, huge impact on healthcare, the value it has in terms of the planet, 30% of greenhouse gases from food and agriculture, more than 2/3 of biodiversity, 70-80% of freshwater use. I mean, the list goes on, where food can be a massive enabler. But it can also buy us time. It's one of the few things that actually you can draw down carbon into the soil, and the value of that is enormous. And so it buys us time while we try and come up with some of these other technologies that might. So it's not just reducing that; it's the ability to buy us time while we work out around this existential crisis that we're having about how do we live on this planet, and while we're eating at the moment the value of 3 planets.
Absolutely, it can buy us time. I think that's an important notion. Time we definitely need when we look at the current scenarios and the situation, the food situation of the world, or at least part of the world. Now, Alessa, you have done quite some work on the true cost and the true value, of which we have now heard the distinction of food. You're also part of the group of young people who has pushed this topic on the agenda. It also comes up clearly in the Bites of Transfoodmation manifesto. You're also working at McKinsey. So out of that combination, I would like to hear your points, now building on what Sean just said.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I wrote my thesis on the true cost of food 1.5 years ago. And I quantified the true cost of food of Switzerland. And you're absolutely right, it's much harder to quantify the benefits, but it's already extremely valuable for us to really quantify the costs, because the costs are enormous. You mentioned it, it's 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. The food system is a key driver of biodiversity loss. We spoke about health. Unhealthy diets are the key risk factor for non-communicable diseases like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases. And the majority of people who work who suffer from poverty actually work in agriculture. So there's a huge need to better understand the true cost of food. In my thesis, I quantified the true cost of food of Switzerland. So I looked at externalities in these different areas that I just mentioned: environment, biodiversity, health, livelihoods, animal welfare as well. Animal welfare is also a big topic, livelihoods, and economy. And I came to the conclusion that for every franc that we spend on food in Switzerland, at least 1 franc of external costs are caused. And it's not a positive message, right? It's very clear that the food system is not sustainable. But there is also a positive side around this whole methodology and understanding, because we can use it to transform the food system, and we can use it to transform the food system in a targeted and informed way. So whilst we know on a big level what kind of things need to happen, we need to shift to plant-based diets, we need to reduce food waste, we need to produce more regeneratively. For context-specific decisions, and actually Himanshu's example was a very good one, I would not be surprised if his production way is the one with the smallest external costs and actually the biggest benefits. And if you can actually quantify that and show that if we start supporting things like that instead of conventional production, instead of animal-based production, then we can actually really move forward and build a food system that builds us, that supports all of us. And it's really a huge opportunity to make food system a pillar of sustainable development.
food systems as a pillar of sustainable development. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Alessa. We've heard in the earlier panel, food is cheap, and which is to the point you just made. Food is cheap, but also food is medicine. Now, Eugenia, you're into personalized nutrition, and you've most certainly looked at this specific notion of food as medicine.
Yeah, I think personalized nutrition, it comes from the fact that the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't really work that well. So we all have the same underlying physiology, but at the same time, we often need different things to be healthy. And I think personalized nutrition can really be leveraged to shift to a consumption that is really acknowledging the true cost of food. And how I see really personalized nutrition helping us reaching that goal is in two main topics. The first one is retail. I think making sure that we have enough products, enough innovative products that are personalized in retail, and new technologies like the one Himanshu just mentioned, are going to help consumers making this shift. So consumers will find it easier to make this shift. If we don't help consumers do it, they won't do it. And the second aspect, which I think is really important, will be to target behavioral changes and incorporating personalized nutrition in these behavioral changes. So policies that are making sure people are changing their behaviors and using, ecological models that are taking into account not only the individual factors that are influencing behavior, but also the social and the environmental factors that are changing behaviors. So the community, the social situation, the income of people, something that encompasses all of this. So using personalized nutrition to target those behaviors, I think is really going to help making that shift and really really changing the consumption.
Thanks a lot. Getting practical, you said, and because I'd like to ask you a follow-up question. We have to get consumers to make that shift. And I would like to hear a scientist's perspective. I have two children. They're 22 and 19. One is basically just eating junk food. And the other one is into organic, into environmental and social impact, and into health. They have both the same education, and we try really to educate them in a food systems perspective, even before people were talking about food systems. But I desperately failed, in at least that part of the education. Do you have advice for people in similar situations? They may have both children who only eat junk food.
Well, that is an interesting situation, because I would normally say, the background you're from is going to determine a lot of how you're eating. And this is generally true. But in a situation like this, where you have the same education, same living situation, I would say that there could be some truly personal factors playing a role. We know that behavior is influenced by genetics, even by microbiome. There's so many different things that we also still don't know that could play a role in that. And I see probably, that's a situation where personalized nutrition could help. But to change a behavior, you need incentives. So we need, in general, to change the incentives that we are giving to people. If we want someone to eat more vegetables, for example, we can't just tell them, eat more vegetables. Giving more information is not going to change things, in my opinion. We need to make people want to do it. So changing incentives at a policy level, and also other strategies like nudging, which is basically making it the default choice, for example, to have a side dish of salad instead of potatoes, just making a stupid example. Or in the supermarkets, having the healthy products where you can see them. instead of chips. So these are like small strategies that can all add up to changing behaviors.
Thanks. I tried with financial incentives, through pocket money. I failed as well, but talking about money, it's the moment to turn to a bank. When we talk about the value of food, food is not properly valued by consumers. We've heard, there are gaps in policies, but of course, there are gaps in financial markets. So, Suzanne, you're heading agri-food networks in Rabobank, and how do you value sustainable food properly in your daily work, and not only from an environmental perspective, from a social perspective and a health perspective too?
Yeah, thank you very much. Susanne van Tilburg, Rabobank. I'm a parent as well. And I have a conflict because my daughter is a self-declared vegan, but whenever she comes traveling from London back to the Netherlands, she always asks for a cheese fondue, because that's her favorite on the menu. So it's all very recognizable. And I think it all boils down to one statement, which is that the healthy and sustainable food is more expensive than unhealthy and unsustainable food. If I look at my son, who's a student, if he wants to have a quick bite, the meals that are being served in the supermarket, salads, are way too expensive for a student to afford that on a daily basis versus the hamburgers of McDonald's that are so easily and fill up quickly. So it is all very recognizable. So we have to reverse that food system. And what is the interest of a bank in reversing that food system? Well, first of all, Rabobank is a global food and agri leading bank. Sean knows us very well. We team up very well with the forum. But we can add one aspect that has not been mentioned so far, which is the true risks. Because if we look at the value chain, you can actually, through discussing it through the true value of food, identify the true risks in that value chain. We are a bank, and we always, for decades, used to look at the financial health of our customers. But now we are looking at the sustainability performance of our customers. And if we want to either reward them, incentivize them, facilitate them into that food system transition to reverse that food system, we do need to be able, where are the weak spots? And how can they be incentivized? How can we lobby with the governments to change the policies? So the dinner that Sean attended yesterday was organized by us. And we really, it was a good dinner. It was a true value dinner, actually. We really had the true price of the Brazilian coffee that was served, to the amazement of some people. Said, whoa, that's really a big difference.
Did you make the attendees pay?
Sorry?
Did you make the attendees pay?
Oh, that will follow. After the panel discussion.
You had to work for it, good.
So that was, but what I truly liked about that dinner was that this was actually the first time that, and I'm working now, I think like for 2-3 years on true value food, that we have seen 4 ministers addressing true value food explicitly. That they just don't use this concept, but they are interested, like the European Commission with the Green Deal, because they see the incentivized component. Because if you address the true value of food, you do not only incentivize the consumers by creating more transparency and giving them real choices, because you can trace back the food, but you can also incentivize the producers. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of work to do still, because if you look at the carbon credits that they can generate, they're not even compensated for that. It's not counted in. So if a farmer doesn't do anything in his field, just take care of his scope 1 and scope 2, as we mentioned that in the carbon credit world, by using electric vehicles, then that's all, that's fine. Then he can be left alone and it's okay. If he invests in soil health, that is really ticking the boxes on biodiversity, reducing food loss and waste, and also adding to the carbon sequestration, there's not anything that he gets rewarded for. So that is the advocacy part, and that's, I think, where these type of dinners are really helpful for, that we as a bank really care for, because if we can get those incentives at producer level, then we can start investing also at scale.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you a follow-up question, and then I'll go to you, because I'm sure you have a number of questions and points to make, and I would like to collect them before we go back to the panelists. So you said you're looking at risk now, and sustainable food production or unsustainable food production considered as risk. In other words, that these unsustainable companies will simply be flushed out of the market?
Yeah, actually we take a client picture of each and every client. We have a photo, a sustainability photo. So the front runners are the category 1, and then we have the laggers behind in the category 5, and we just give them time. Because we cannot just, require from them to change overnight their whole practice. We have clients in Brazil that could have been engaged in the past legally with deforestation. Of course, we don't finance that. But it's legalized in Brazil to some extent. So you cannot, it's nuanced and it's quite subtle. But if we are able to identify the metrics, especially on health and social, which is much more easy than really measuring the carbon footprint, then we are getting there. And that's the thing that is still lacking. And I really hope that we can create with the partnerships with the World Resources Institute and many others, those metrics that enable us to really measure the impact that they can have in being more sustainable and producing healthy food.
So health and social is easier to measure than carbon?
It's the other way around.
Okay, I just wanted to be, it's the other way around.
But because it's, how can you measure the health of an individual person? And who is willing to pay for that?
Sean, you wanted to come in.
There was just one thing. No, I thought you put it really well. And in my former life, I was a sort of serial entrepreneur, and it just struck me. If I was working in this space today, the thing that's going to unlock this as well is data. Because if you're a consumer at the moment, and I have 2 kids similar age also, but not quite as diverse as you, but the one who is passionate about this, but she really wants to know, on that, and it's that point of data. Because the problem with agriculture is that chain is often incredibly long and complex. So how do you measure the carbon footprint of a soya bean, which is the size of your fingernail, that was grown on the other side of the world? And so that data piece, that is what's going to unlock this at the moment. And if we can get that data right, you can get the monitoring and verification right, you can put all the pressure on the whole supply chain, and there's a huge opportunity. This is not actually for big data players. There's a huge entrepreneurship opportunity there to get in and play that sort of data aggregator role and to put that value back in. So it's thinking about what are some of those unlocks that will really unlock this true value, and I think data is one of them. I could think of several others.
Alessa,
can I add one thing?
And I
yes.
go to, you
so
can already raise your hands if you have questions.
So one thing that I think is very important to understand in this whole true cost of food discussion is those external costs. That's not some kind of like calculation of something of, that's what these are costs that we are already paying indirectly. And it's mostly those people haven't caused the cost. But also we do, right? We pay through health insurance, we pay through taxes, we pay through climate change costs. So this is really about creating the transparency, and data will be key on enabling it, to really understand how can we reduce that cost and create a win-win situation for all of us, where the food system has much smaller external costs. There still will be some, inevitably so, and much, much more benefits or higher value. And to really get to a food system where the default choice of production, consumption, regulation along the entire value chain is sustainable.
Thank you. Himanshu, you spoke already before, so we will go to this table. Maybe we'll get to you, but we'll start with this table.
Thank you, fantastic panel. Really great to hear all the different opinions, and great to hear people talking about the points that are actually important. My name is Patricia Bubner, CEO of our Billion Bio. We make cell-cultured meat without the animal. So something that I would just like to raise is the point that we also have other methods to produce food sustainably. And biotechnology is really something that holds an incredible promise to not only deliver something that's sustainable, but also something that's healthy, something that can be personalized in the future. So just wanted to hear, especially from Susanne, also from Alessa, how you think about that. Thank you.
Well, if it adds to the choices that consumers have, that's perfectly fine. But let me be very straight. As a bank, we don't believe in meat taxes. Why not? Because we believe that you have to have a balance and you have to provide the consumers with the choices. We are not the ones prescribing those choices. So we prefer to have, let's say, a different way of producing beef to try to stimulate consumers of eating less beef. And if it's possible, of course, to also try to get to regen practices and agroecology for those that are producing the beef. So that in different ways you try to shift that system. But it's like with milk. Soy milk has a really small ecological footprint compared to cow's milk. But the nutrients in that milk are much higher. And we do have continents in this world that are really still needing those nutrients. So I think it's the trade-offs that you should discuss. And that's the power of true value food. It exposes the trade-offs that we have to discuss all together.
Alessa?
Yes. So first, maybe my personal opinion on the tax topic is that if something is super bad for the environment, it should cost more. And if we do that through taxes, doesn't matter if it's food or energy, we cannot continue the way we are going right now. We are literally destroying our planet and for the future generations, and already our generation, right? Now, in terms of alternative protein, I think it's a integral part of the solution. So we know that the carbon footprint is much smaller. The biodiversity footprint, of course, is much smaller. There's no land use, no water use, no pollution. I think the biggest problem there still is, can we scale it to the capacity that we need? And then also, can we solve the energy problem? Because it does use a lot of energy. However, energy is a solvable problem. We can just move to renewable energy. We cannot solve the biodiversity, pollution, water, land use problem. So I definitely think that it's going to be a key part of the solution. And I think it's multiple things there, right? It's going to be cultured meat, but it's also plant-based protein. But we also need to think about the fact that if we have these solutions, they still need to be healthy. They cannot be ultra-processed. And that's also a benefit of the true cost, true value thing, is that we have all of these sustainability dimensions, not just one of them. We really try and pull it together and then translate it into a language that we all understand, which is money. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
And if I had quickly add something, in terms of nutrition, I think biotechnology will offer a lot because lab-grown meat, animal-free dairy, they are going to be exactly, as meat is. Maybe not now, but in 10 years. And so I really think there's a huge potential there because the protein is exactly the same. It's cells from animals. They're just not grown in an animal. And animal-free dairy, it's going to be casein or lactoglobulin, so proteins which are in milk. We're not there yet, but I really think we will be there.
Thanks, Eugenia. We will take one question here, and one in the back. We'll take the three together. Yes, please.
So I have a few remarks and sharing some ideas that came out just through the web all this week.
Briefly.
Yeah. The first one is...
I see a lot of hands.
No. The first one is we're all focused on data, yet when we look at the lack of trust in society today, we have access to so much data in our society today, and yet we're seeing nobody really tapping into that. So number one is data the solution to change behavior? The second one is just want to share something that came out of a talk from Richard Edelman this week, which really, he said, the notion of fairness does not inspire people. So as I'm challenging this to everyone, the notion of opportunity. And the other thing he said was the one place where people find trust today is trust in their companies and their CEOs, because that's what's creating the ecosystem. So challenged a lot of big corporations. Do they have a role to play in changing the way we trust our food systems?
Thank you. Then let's go over there.
Hello, my name is Johannes. I'm from Zurich, and I'm a founder of a cooperative where we connect all the different actors from the food value chain around Zurich, from the producers to the end customers. And we are also discussing exactly this question from the true value of food, or the true cost also. And because we have a lot of organic farmers, and we see they're creating big value for the biodiversity and also for the social connections they're creating, but it's not valued and isn't also valued in the accounting systems. And we want to join this discussion. We are working on the ground, but we want to join this conversation how to measure this two rewards, because there's so much complexity also with biodiversity, how you want to measure it, and also with different stuff. But it's necessary, and yeah, we want to ask if we can join this conversation and also define these different metrics, because we would be interested to see what's the process of that and how to discuss it, because we see it as a big challenge also to find the true metrics. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's go to let's take one question there in the back, and it's a very important point you make. A young farmer wanting to join the conversation. Sean, I mean, we've both been in many conversations about food systems. The group that is most absent generally are the young farmers. Farmers in general and young farmers in particular. So definitely the door is open, and remind us if we, if it was to close. We will reopen it. Please.
Yes. My name is Nancy Bourgeois. I'm a lecturer in international livestock systems at Bern University of Applied Sciences. I have a question to Alessa, because you mentioned that we have to move to plant-based diets. So my question is what to do with the majority of land which is not suitable for cropping, which is worldwide the case, first of all. Second of all, how are you going to produce vegetables or plants without manure, knowing that manure from livestock is now about 50% of the fertilizer used worldwide? So, thank you.
Thanks a lot. But you can answer now, because we said it would take 3 questions, so
okay.
Go ahead.
Maybe first to the last one. So I don't know if maybe I didn't say that correctly. It's shift to a more plant-based diet, not a fully plant-based one. Switzerland also has a lot of grasslands, pasture. I mean, it makes sense to produce animal protein there, just not in the extent that we are currently doing. So I'm more talking about we shouldn't subsidize high-intensity conventional animal production where we import the feed from Brazil, which is destroying the Amazon. So there is a balance that we should aim towards. There's a balance and there is a value in having animal-based production systems, but the balance is really not, it's really not balanced right now. So I hope that kind of addresses that. And then on the other one, so the data transparency thing, I think data is going to be a key enabler, but it's just one of them, right? I mean, there are many, many things that need to happen. And I think you raised a very valid point as well, that we need to work together. There needs to be much more cross-value chain collaboration between regulators, private sector, retail, farmers. One example, and I think especially farmers also, that maybe were not in the discussion as much earlier, they have a real interest in being part of it. And there's also a real benefit in it for them if we start understanding the benefits better of the food system, not just the costs, right? Because it is very valuable to have local food security, local food production system. It's great for the local communities. And I think there is interest there. So when I was finishing my thesis, I stayed a bit at ETH and I worked, and we tried to figure out if there's enough interest from Swiss food system stakeholders to together define a common language for the true cost of food, including benefits. And we did speak with the Swiss Farmers Association, and they were interested. And I mean, the project didn't advance because there wasn't enough time and money commitment, and I think we were still a bit too early 2 years ago. But I'm convinced that going forward, this is what we need, and this is what will happen, and it just feels like now that the momentum is really starting to increase, and that's very motivating.
Thanks. Sean, can I take you up on the question of organic farmers having a place at the table, and how this could help solve, or go into the right direction on solving the food systems challenge we're facing.
So I could answer it from many perspectives. I'm going to take one, right, which is around soil, for example. So, I mean, soil is fundamental to how we think about food and agriculture. And at the moment, I mean, a third to half of our soils worldwide are degraded. So the absolute most important, and severely degraded, to the point that actually if we keep going the way we're going, you could see another 15, 20% yield loss worldwide just on that alone. So the challenge is just at a simple level is how do we get more organic matter back into the soil? And you know, at the moment, a lot of those soils in Europe are maybe 1.2 to, you know, to give you an example, 1.2 up to maybe 1.5, 1.6% organic matter in the soil. One is like desertification level, if you get that, and there are parts of Southern Europe that are hitting that. And so how can we get that up to 3? And it's what I'm seeing at the moment is there is a philosophical debate that is sort of challenging, actually, where stopping us sort of getting to, because we're finding organic, absolutely organic farming, and if people want to do that, there's a price premium for it. There are other players, you were saying it, you know, with the vertical farming earlier on. We need to actually now be outcome based. We need to get organic matter into the soil to say 3% across the whole world. The impact that will have on just soil carbon capture alone is at a scale which is colossal, just if we did that. And so we have to, I mean, we've got to take this as an existential crisis that it is and start to say, right, how do we just get some of those things down? And while we're also challenging the systems, there is no, you know, it's going to be about a mixture of all of these. There is no one solution that is by far the right answer. And that's the thing. Someone was saying it earlier, it's less is more. You know, and that's less is more on everything. You know, how do you get big agrochemical companies to reduce what they put on their field by 50% and, you know, all of that sort of thing. So.
Thanks a lot. One last question I think we have time for. Who has the most urgent question? Raise both hands. Yes, you.
So my question would be also about the organic farming, or this is also my personal professional background. But lately, I don't know if you were aware, but in Switzerland there was a huge article from the Syngenta, head of Syngenta, saying, turn away from organic, this is not the future. How do you see this in the big picture? Because those are people who are in power, they have the money, and if they put something like this out, it can definitely influence. So where is like the weight that would balance that out?
Who would you like to answer this question?
The person who feels most attracted by this question.
But I suppose it's, I mean, because you might want someone else to pick up, because in a way it's what I was just saying. In a way, to me, organic farming, you know, is great. But it's not the solution. There is no the solution here. This is the thing. It's right. What is going to get, you know, if that's what you're passionate about, if it's organic farming and that, then, you know, there's a market there for that. What's big is what, you know, you were saying earlier, is around choice. You know, can we create that dynamic choice that leads to powerful impact at the end of the day? And that's, you know, we've got to get greenhouse gases down in agriculture. And I go back to that point about buying time. I mean, this is a sector that, you know, it's 30%, and we've got like years to do that. But, you know, for some farmers, that's what they want to focus on. They're really passionate about climate smart agriculture, which is brilliant. Can we you know, give them the support to do what they need to do? You know, and we've got other farmers that are passionate about like the reduced use of water in the system. You know, and so it's, you know, or there's a nutrition piece. How can we get much more nutritious food? Maybe it's organic, maybe it's something else that provides the healthiest possible outcome in every carrot. Who knows? But let's go for those, you know, let's really set those targets for ourselves and just go for it.
Let's set the targets, just go for it. I have a last question. To Alessa and Eugenia, it was said that fairness doesn't inspire. I personally almost feel offended by this statement. You know, how do you see this?
I mean, I think that it's naive to think that, you know, people are just inspired by fairness. I think we all here think a fair world is right and just, but we have to face the reality that people have other problems in their mind. So we need to have incentives for people to change. Otherwise, they will not change.
Okay, clear.
I personally think that in our privileged situations, it's like our moral obligation to act. And like, so for me, it is inspiring. And I think for many of us here it is. But I fully agree with Eugenia. I mean, what we need is a system that incentivizes the sustainable choice everywhere, because if not, we will never get to the change we need in the time that we have, and it's just not a lot of time. So whilst we could wait, and maybe we would get there over decades, we simply don't have decades.
Suzanne?
Yeah, just a quick remark, because I fully agree, but then you will have to know what is fair. And that is exactly the problem, which is now not completely solved. We have experiments in coffee shops in the Netherlands. I realize this is a kind of a loaded term, but it's the coffee shops that do provide the real information on the farmers where the coffee is grown. And more students of the next generation are buying that coffee because they can really trace down and see where is the coffee coming from, what was the income generated for that farmer. That's fair, and then they can verify that themselves. And I think this is what we need, the young generation, call for action, to walk the talk as well. Not being vegan, eating cheese fondue, but really pushing through and claiming in the world that you do want to have this fair, healthy, and environmentally well-produced food.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. You said it will take time. We don't have the time, so we have to accelerate. We have to get as much organic matter as possible back into the soil. Companies will increasingly be valued on the risk they present in their value chain and in what they produce. I hope they will also be rewarded for that very soon and not penalized by the market, something we will have to work on collectively. We've talked a lot about the true value. We've talked about nudging. And I learned that fairness can inspire, or not so much. I hope it does inspires me. You know, I've coached football teams for most of my life, and I keep on trying to tell my players that, you know, fairness pays off, and this is how you end up in the Champions League. So let's aim for, you know, let's put more faith into fairness, and let's fight for it. Thanks a lot to all of you. We are running out of time, so back to our moderator, and a big round of applause for Sean, Suzanne, Eugenia, and Alessa.
Yeah, thank you so much for these insightful comments and the conversation. We will have more time afterwards during the aperitif to continue the discussions. But first, I would like to invite you, Alessa, to conclude with some final remarks.
Sorry, I had to drink some water. Thank you, Rahel. So as we are coming towards the end of this event, let me summarize the 3 key messages we would like you to take forward. Number 1, our current food system needs to change. On average, I told you about my estimation, but there are also global estimations on the true cost of food. On average, every dollar spent on food globally causes at least $1 to $2 additional dollars of external costs. Agnes asked earlier, can we afford our current food system? And the answer is no, we cannot. We have to change it. So number 2, change is not only inevitable, but it is beneficial. This is a story of opportunity, a story of positive change. We can move from a system where we have huge external costs that we are paying already indirectly to a system with minimized external costs and maximize benefits. And we can even probably create additional value that we don't have yet today. The third message is change can only happen if we start trusting each other more and start working together more, especially where we have not done so in the past. Again, this is a story of positive change, but only if all of us have a voice in our common future. So a bit more about each of these 3 key messages before we then go into the apero. Number 1, again, our current food system needs to change. Instead of enabling sustainable development, it really, right now, stalls sustainable development. Impacts of the food system, or many of the impacts that the food system currently creates, no one is held accountable for. And the costs that are caused are often borne by the very parts of the population, I already mentioned this, that have not caused a problem. And as highlighted by the current crisis that we are seeing, the system is far from resilient. It is, I guess, fair to say that the current food system is a risk. This is not new information for any of us. Everyone here is somehow working on this topic, and that actually also brings me to the next message. Change is already happening, it's inevitable, it's beneficial. It's hugely encouraging to see how much people are already doing and how much has started to change over the past years, but we need to accelerate. We know what a sustainable food system looks like. And our vision of the Bites of Transfoodmation Manifesto paints the future of the sustainable food system as an empowering, resilient, unified, diverse, transparent food system, which is based on an understanding of the true cost and value of food. So as I said, change has started, but what do we need to do to accelerate this change? That brings us to the third message. Change can only happen if we start trusting each other more and start working together again. And that is also, as you might know, one of the key messages of this year's WEF, working together, restoring trust. A lot of individual actors have started acting. So there is example from regulation, for example, Denmark supporting farmers in the shift towards producing more plant-based protein instead of animal-based protein. Canada adapting its health guidelines or its nutrition guidelines to the planetary health diet, which I'm sure most of you also know. Nestle, for example, CPG player, investing much more in regenerative agriculture. Retailers like the Dutch Albert Heijn, who has committed to having 60% of their offering, of their protein offering by 2030 being plant-based. A lot of things are happening. But for large-scale change and the speed we need it to happen in, all of us across regions, across the supply chain, across age groups, need to work together more. For the different actors, for the WEF, I want to say 2 quick words on what I think the role of the WEF could be and what I think the role of Switzerland could be. So the WEF has a huge power, of course, and can really support creating awareness on this topic and creating the enabling environment that is needed for the whole value chain to move forward. And that is creating awareness or creating knowledge on the types of policies that we need, the types of standards that we need. How do we need to agree on how to measure these things on a global level. Data transparency, traceability, cross-value chain collaboration. They can be a key enabler of these topics. Switzerland, last year, in preparation of the summit, published a nutrition strategy for 2030, in it specifically mentioning that it wants to create transparency on external costs of the food system and internalize these external costs. Switzerland could be a leading example, a role model of how we can start building the sustainable food system. We have huge potential in Switzerland around innovation. We heard that earlier. We have a very well-functioning agricultural subsidy system, of which, as a side comment, 1/4 of subsidies currently go into animal production systems. And one very interesting example as well is that meat promotion receives 30 times the number of financial support as consumer education on food waste. So there's definitely a lot to do in that area. However, the final point, in this space of trusting each other more and working together, together is the most important word, because together we can write the story of positive change, and we can create this food system where sustainable choices are the default along the entire value chain. And there is one thing I would really like to emphasize on this together. is youth needs to be included in all of these future discussions. We are ready, and we want to say in our common future, you know how to contact us, and we need you to help us help you, so that together we can write the story of positive change. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alessa, for these strong messages. Dear guests, I hope you also enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And I would like to invite you now for some tasty bites and some further fruitful discussions. Thank you very much for joining, for listening. Have a good afternoon.